When people look at your face, what do they see? One of my favorites is Thomas Jefferson. There's a story going around about Thomas Jefferson that I think is revealing and very much to the point. Whether it's true or not, I'm not sure, but it doesn't really make a lot of difference. According to the story, Thomas Jefferson and a number of other folks were trying to get across a particular river. It was pouring down rain, and the river was flooded. And some of the folks were trying to get across by horseback, and some were trying to wade across or swim across or get across the best they could. And according to the story, one man was standing at the edge as Thomas Jefferson rode up on his horse and started to go into the stream, and he asked the president if he could ride across behind him. And the president said, yes, of course, get on. So he did. When he got to the other side, one of his friends said to him, do you realize who it was who carried you, who ferried you across the river? And the man said, no, I had no idea. And he said, well, it was the President of the United States. That was Thomas Jefferson. How did you ever have the courage to ask him if he could ride across the river behind him on the horse? And the man said, I don't know. He said, I only know that some folks in this world have yes written across their faces, and some folks have no, and his was a yes face. His was a yes face. This passage that Paul wrote to the church at Corinth, what he's really saying is, you have a yes face. Christ has made you ambassadors for him, ambassadors of reconciliation. He has reconciled us, and he has made us to be reconcilers of the world. He has blessed us to bless others. And it's a tremendous affirmation of human life, isn't it? It's one of the things that we want little Madison to understand as she grows up, that she's a child of the covenant. And our prayer is that there'll never be a time in her life when she did not know that she was special to God. That's our calling. And that takes a congregation of people, it takes parents, it takes everybody who are responding to what God has already done, what God has already set in motion, what God has already spoken from the beginning of time. He has said, Madison is going to be another example of my reaffirmation of the goodness of life and the richness of human life and human relationships. So you don't want to leave church this morning without knowing that you have a yes face. You have a yes face. It is God's gift to you. Don Hammarskjöld, a magnificent human being who gave his life to the United Nations and worked for world peace a number of years ago and went down in an airplane accident, you may remember, said something in two little lines that I've never forgotten. He said, for all that has been, thanks. For all that has been. Not just the good stuff, but all the stuff. The times when I was on top of things and the times when I wasn't. The times when I was in control, and the times when I had no idea who was in control. For all that has been, thanks. And for all that shall be, yes. In other words, when I look at my past, O Lord, help me to have the capacity to give thanks and praise and honor for the giftedness of life in all its magnificence. Help me to be a thanks giver before I'm anything else. Help me to realize that you have blessed my life and enriched my life in ways that if I were to try to give thanks, I wouldn't even know where to begin. I've often asked people, if you could go back, would you like to? And several people have said, yes, you bet I would. In fact, one man, immensely successful in his business. I asked him one time, I said, what would you like more than anything else in this world? And he said, to do it all over again. To put it together all over again, to work with the people I've worked with, to have the challenge that I had. I'd love to do it all over again. And then you ask, would you like to do it if you had to go back without your experience? without what you've learned, without what you know now, that you didn't know when you were 21. And I have yet to have anybody say, oh, you bet. I'd give up my experience in them. Nobody. Nobody. Because it's the richest. It may not all be good. There are things that I'm ashamed of and things that I wish had not happened, things I saw and experienced that I wish to God I had not. But as I look back on my life, I am able as a human being surrounded by the grace of God to be able to say, Lord, I thank you for it all. Jagged edges and everything. For all that has been, thanks. And to all that shall be, help me to say yes. That's one of the most magnificent, beautiful, powerful words in the English language. Yes. And what Paul is saying to the church of Corinth, what he's saying to you and to me, is that gospel people are yes people. Why? Because we have every reason to be. What are the characteristics of you? What makes a yes person? What puts a yes on your face? If you had to say this morning what it is, what would you say? I've drawn up a little list of my own, and you can make up your own list. One of the things I think that produces a yes person is the experience of encouragement. Who was it in your life who laid a hand on your shoulder and said to you in some way that you could never forget, you're important? God put that person in your path. Who was it? Who was it? A school teacher, an algebra teacher, wrote a note to all of her students at the end of class, her 9th grade algebra teacher. And she sent a note home with them that was mimeographed, and then she wrote a small personal note at the end of every letter. But this is what she said to every student. Every student. She taught in Houston just a few years ago. Nobody will ever know how I feel. I think of you every day, she said. I take a part of you home with me each night. I wonder what you're thinking. I watch you think and learn. I watch you smile. I watch you struggle and try. I rejoice with your success. I'm depressed when you fail. I care. I love you. I really do. I'm with you each day of the week, molding and growing and sharing. I am interested in you. You tell me about your day. You share your interest. You involve me in your ups and downs. And for 9 months, you are mine. And then I must let you go to blossom, to advance, and to grow. I'll see you in 3 months, but you will have changed. You will belong to someone else, but no one can take away what we have shared. You will come visit me. You will wave at me in the halls, but it won't replace our cherished time. Life goes on. There will be more students and more teachers, but I will always care. I'll wonder how you're doing and what you're doing, and if you ever think of me, do well, make me proud, spread your wings, but save a tiny place in your heart for me. I love you. You've made me grow. Love, Miss Hall. And then she wrote this note to a student named Toby. Dear Toby, boy, will I miss you. You've always been a student whom you always have a student whom you love and will miss most. And Toby, that's you. You could always make me laugh even when I didn't want to. Don't ever change, Toby. Love, Miss Hall. Isn't that something? And from an algebra teacher. I got a note like that from an algebra teacher, I'd still be talking about. Who wrote something like that to you? Who was it? Who was a Barnabas, a son of encouragement in your life? Go to Venice, Italy, and walk through the hallways and the aisles of St. Mark's Cathedral and realize that old St. Mark was once a youngster who bowed down on all, and Paul said, I'm sending him home. I don't want anything to do with him ever again. He hasn't got what it takes. And Barnabas said, well, now wait a minute, Paul. Let me take him and see what can be done. You go to Venice today, and there's St. Mark's cathedral because of a Barnabas who knew that it wasn't over. Who in your life put a yes on your face because they showed you that whatever you'd done and whatever you'd been, it wasn't over? Wasn't over. Yes person is produced because they've experienced in some way the power of encouragement. A second thing a yes person needs is the experience of grace and forgiveness. Bernie Shore is in the process of teaching character traits, 8 character traits in the private and public school setting. And one of the unique things about the program she represents is that they always include the character trait, the quality of forgiveness. And you know how important that is, don't you? You know how important it is when someone communicates to you that the reality that grace is the last word, not judgment. And that God comes to us first and foremost with His mercy. That's what the cross is all about. God saying, I'll take whatever you've done and whatever you've been, and I'll bear it on myself so that you can go free, so that you can live, so that you can be whole and clean and forgiven. Someone once said, it's as if you as a human being were called to leap from one trapeze to another in a room much higher than this one. You had no choice. You knew your turn was coming. You had to leave the stability of the one side and move out and take the trapeze in the middle of the air. You looked down and all of a sudden there was a net that went from side to side as far as you could see and from end to end as far as you could view. And it was covered with foam rubber. And you knew that you could not fall or fail. You couldn't. That's what grace and the forgiveness of God is all about. It's God saying to the prodigal's father, saying to the prodigal son, wherever you go and with whatever hogs you find yourself, you're mine. You're mine. And the day come when you'll come home. The experience of grace and the forgiveness of God puts a yes on some people's face. The experience of knowing what one human being can do puts a yes on, to realize that you're not just a number, that you're a person with the capabilities of making choices and decisions, the implications of which only God knows. King Christian was the king of Denmark when Hitler overran Denmark. And he was able to negotiate with them and get them to agree that no Nazi flag would fly over Denmark. One day he looked out his window, and there on one of the tallest buildings in the city was the Nazi flag. And he got a cold hold of the Nazi commander, and he said, we had an agreement. And I want you to know that that Nazi flag is to come down by noon tomorrow. And at 11 o'clock the next day, the Nazi flag was still flying. King Christian got on the phone again and he said, if that flag isn't down in 50 minutes, I'm sending a soldier to take it down. And the Nazi commandant said, then the soldier will be shot. And King Christian said, so let it be. But I want you to know that the soldier will be me. There are times in this life, aren't there, when it really doesn't matter what anybody else does. That you realize that God has laid it upon your heart and your shoulders to step forward and to make a commitment. And it doesn't matter what anybody else does. Christian people are those who know that we measure ourselves and who we are and what we do not on the basis of the majority, but on the basis of our conscience anchored in the presence and the purpose of God. That doesn't mean that we always agree, but it does mean that we take our decisions very, very seriously because we believe in the power of one human being and what that one human being can do. And when you believe that, it puts a yes on your face because you know that the decisions and the actions of your life are not purposeless, but because they're grounded in eternity. Yes, folks. And finally, I think the thing that puts a yes on somebody's face is the experience of the sovereignty of God. Jesus lived out all his life with a sense of the sovereignty and the purpose of God. And that's why so much of the New Testament, so much of the Gospels are made up of events that were unscheduled and not on the agenda at all. They happened as Jesus walked along and as he passed along. Someone came here and someone came there and someone said this and someone said that. And out of that came the gospel. I think of that cartoon in which Charlie Brown goes to Lucy. She's got up the psychiatric sign, says psychiatric help 5 cents. And he says, Lucy, I need your help. I don't feel a sense of commitment to anything. I can't find direction or purpose in my life, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And she says, Charlie Brown, don't you know that life is like a ship? And some people find their deck chairs at the front of the ship and some at the back of the ship. Some on the right side, some on the left side. Actually, that's port and starboard, too. But she said they have their deck chairs at various places on the ship. And he says, Lucy, my problem is that I can't even get my ship deck chair opened. Purpose. Purpose. Vision 2000 is coming to a close, at least officially. And I think it's been a wonderful experience, and it's, at least as far as I know, a wonderful experience in the life of our church. Johnny Warren, the committee, so many people, hundreds of people have been involved. Hundreds of people calling. The PL unit, the PLU groups have met. Last weekend was a tremendous, tremendous weekend. And I was thrilled by it all. I hope you were. Let me say something about it. Whether or not we reach the final tally and the dollar amount that's being shot for, reached for, hoped for, that really is in God's hands. I don't doubt that for a minute. And I don't think we ought to worry about that. Whether or not we reach the dollar goal is really God's decision. But whether or not we have full participation in the life of the church, realizing that every small gift is important, and that it's much more important to have widespread participation than it is even to reach the goal. And that's our decision. Whether I participate even at the smallest level, that's my decision. Whether we together reach what we're reaching for, that's God's decision. That's God's decision. Because we're a people who believe in the sovereignty of God. We believe that things don't happen by accident. We believe that God has his own agenda and his own purpose in mind, and what he calls us to do is line up with that purpose to the very best of our ability, to give it our best shot, to step forward in faith and leave the results in his hands. And he'll take care of it. He'll take care of it. You don't have to worry about that. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? Because Jesus did. And if you believe that, it'll put a yes on your face, the likes of which this world has never seen. Did you ever hear of a guy by the name of Bill Clem? He was one of the greatest umpires that the world has known. He was one of 6 umpires inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. And Prossetti and the ball both came to home plate at exactly the same moment. And the Cleveland Indians all yelled, "He's out." And all the New York Yankee fans yelled, "He's safe." And Bill Clem lifted his enormous bulk and waited until all the dust had settled. And then he bellowed out in such a way that the whole stands, the whole stadium could hear him. "He ain't anything until I say he is." He ain't anything until I say he is. That's what God says. It's what God says in your life and in my life. It's what God says in the life of this church and in the life of this nation. Who is in charge and who is in control? The one who is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And if you know that, it'll put a yes on your face. Why did you pick him? He's the President of the United States. Who are you to ask the President of the United States for a ride across the river? I don't know. I want to know that some folks in this world have yes across their face and some folks have no. I looked up at him and it said yes. When others at school or in your neighborhood or in your business or in your family, when they look at you, what do they read? What do they read?